looks good now.
It looks great.
Good to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
You look lovely.
Thank you so much.
With your yellow outfit.
Hey, we match.
Yeah, we do actually.
Mm-hmm.
You remind me of this painting of Gustav Klimt.
That's exactly what I said when I got the dress. Thank you so much.
Oh.
I'm delighted. I picked up the dress and I put it on and I thought, what is that pattern? I know that pattern. And then I sent a picture and I realized it's the Klimt tree. Yes. And I wasn't sure about the dress at first, but as soon as I realized it was a Klimt dress, it was the one.
Yeah.
And it's his first outing as well. So thank you very much.
Is this the one you wear when you have your performances?
No, it is not. But I do also wear a gold dress. It's the dress I wear for Love Story is by a British designer called Georgia Harding. And it's called the Fossil dress. And I chose it very specifically, firstly, because I wanted a gold dress. Because I like the idea of making gold out of poetry, making gold from little or nothing. But I also liked that it was made like a shell, because in the original manuscript for Love Story, I haven't introduced myself, but in the original
we'll get to that.
in the original manuscript for Love Story, I used the shell repeatedly as a motif, and it's also very practical because I can move in it. I have to be able to move around on stage. And I thought, I'll have a different dress for every show that I do. And I just wear the same dress over and over again. And here I am in gold again. So this is one of my favorite topics is dresses. So you've really... I can talk about dresses for a long time. And
again, from what I see on all your pictures, the yellow goldish color is something that goes again and again.
Yeah. I think it's gold.
It's gold.
It's a wonderful color.
Yeah. We're going to talk a lot about poetry today.
Yay!
And also, so for everyone tuning in, we are writing next to this video what it's about, so they will know that it's about poetry. But for those just jumping in, this will be a lot about poetry, because obviously you are a poet. And you write quite a lot, and I've been to one of your performances in Oslo, so we're going to get into that. I guess I'd like to open up with asking you what it's like to be a poet, and how did this all come about?
Well, what it is like to be a poet. I love to introduce myself as a poet. There's something very freeing about the moment you decide you don't have to really explain to people how you managed to do it and how it came about, but you just say, I'm a poet. That's what I do. And what I have found is that when I introduce myself as a poetess and say that I love poetry, is that it usually facilitates an exchange. And someone usually perks up and goes, oh, I write poetry. And more often than not, someone will read me a poem. I've been stopped in the street by friends who just say, I've just written a new poem. I have to read you this. Or I'll meet someone randomly and introduce myself, and they'll say, I wrote a poem, and they'll open up a draft in their emails and read me some of their work. And it's a really nice way to be in the world, because you just get to know people in a very different way, and you realize that many, many people do have a relationship with poetry that's very personal. And I was very freed the moment I decided to just be a poet. And it all came about over a relatively long period. I've always been a writer, and I've had many different careers as a writer. I was working in PR, I was a blogger, and then I was an academic. And life happened, and it was poetry that kind of helped me find my feet as a writer and then as an artist. And I wrote Love Story over a period really from 2019, and it's ongoing. Love Story doesn't seem to be finishing anytime soon. It just keeps reinventing itself as a body of work. I just kind of live with Love Story as this living idea.
I've been to your performance, and I've witnessed the Love Story thing. Tell us a little bit about what Love Story is, and what are your plans with the development of that? Is it because it's not just a poem; it's like a compilation of several poems, right? Tell us a little bit about what Love Story is actually.
Yeah, that's right. It started off as a poetry manuscript. It was just this tiny little Word document, a collection of poems. And they were really the first poems I'd ever written. I wrote the opening poem for Love Story, Quantum Change. And it was just this huge release and almost a promise that I was going to commit the rest of my life to poetry, or until it made sense to be committed to poetry. But I was going to dedicate myself to this art form for as long as it made sense. I wrote Love Story over a period of time, and in the beginning I tried to publish it, and of course I couldn't get it published. And at some point I realized that it was much more than just a manuscript and just something to be put on a page, but there was actually a musicality to it. And I actually had a wonderful mentor who's a poet, and he looked through the manuscript for me and he said, well, why don't you make 2 documents, one that you're going to publish and one that you're going to turn into a show. And he pointed out that there was this musicality to it. So I ended up thinking, okay, maybe I can perform these poems, and I started performing them around Oslo. I hosted my own show after realizing that I didn't have to wait for permission. I didn't need permission from a publisher or an agent or a theatre director, and I tried all of those paths, by the way. I tried for a really long time to get Love Story into the right hands. And I actually became familiar with the local street art community in Oslo, and they're artists who often make art on the streets, and it's very spontaneous, and you don't need permission from an institution. And I realized I can just do this with my friends. And I had a show. Actually, it was Chizumu Daisy from her space said, you can use my space and just have a show and sell some tickets. And I did. And we had so much fun. And I was singing a little bit at that point, but I didn't have any other musicians on stage with me. Long story short, Dominic Gorham from Somero saw me performing, and we got to know one another, and Somero ended up being the home for Love Story. And what Love Story is now is a cabaret. And I work with a fabulous pianist. Her name is Frida Nostal Hela. And we worked together. We've been doing this for over a year now. We suddenly had this 6-week period where it was like, oh my goodness, we had this piano, we had this stage, we had this manuscript of poems. And we were like, okay, let's put some music to it. And I had also in this period developed some songs. And I said, well, could we try this song and this song and this song? And this cabaret emerged. What I always say and what I say, as you know, at the beginning of the show, I say, love story it's not a love story about finding the perfect partner or the perfect job, but about finding your way back home to yourself. I think that's the kind of love story we don't hear about very often.
Yes, I like how it starts.
Thank you.
Because I guess you expect something else when you come there, the typical love story, another one of those. And I like that it kind of reframes what love is, and that it can be it can represent different things. I also love the idea of combining the poetry with music, and giving it like a cabaret twist. I think that's very good, and I agree that the lady you've chosen to do the piano bit with is also very talented, and it works very well together. I've witnessed it once. I had to leave a little bit early on, but enough to get the picture, and I really enjoyed it. So I hope we can do more together, and that's why I would like to do this also for our guests to get to know a little bit more about what this is, what Love Story is, who you are, and also uncover a little bit the behind the scenes of the poetry world.
Yeah.
There's not many. I guess both writing poetry and spending time with words and poetry in such a dedicated way is something very rare. And yes, I just like to get more of to know more about that process of writing poetry and what it's like, and your passion for doing that. But before that, I would like to ask you another question first. You mentioned how many poems does Love Story have?
I don't know. I know that it has 10 songs-ish, but also there are these musical interludes, and they are songs, but they're quite short. I'd say 12. I think there's around 12 poems in there.
Not more? Because I feel I heard 10, 12 just the first 40 minutes when I was there.
Well, I mean, it's also like you say, there is this, it's all threaded through with a monologue. And some of that monologue is actually written using, without getting too nerdy, poetic devices.
Yes, because that's also what I wanted to mention to you, that I felt from the moment you started talking on the stage till I left, I felt it was just all a large poem. And I know there were several in there, but even in between the breaks, the way you connected the poems was also through, like you say, some form of an artistic device or way. You kind of use poetry to connect the poems or something like that.
I don't think I can turn it off. I think that I before I discovered poetry, I never really felt comfortable with writing. I didn't really quite know how to express myself. But when I found poetry, and then through poetry found song, it started to make sense just to use that. I mean, of course, when you read Shakespeare, for example, people think of it. I think that many people think of Shakespeare as being theatre, and of course it is, but it's actually poetry. It's all written in a very strict meter, and there's a real uniformity to it the whole way through. So I used, I did use lots of different poetic devices, so I don't think there's really a point where the poetry is switched off.
Yeah.
But there are also very distinct poems that I wrote throughout different periods of my life, and so it isn't clear cut at all. I couldn't really tell you.
When you go up on stage, is it mostly obviously there's a rehearsed part, the poems, but there's also a spontaneous element of it, or is it all rehearsed?
It's all rehearsed. Line for line. It's painstaking work.
Really?
Yes.
It's all rehearsed?
All rehearsed, yeah.
It feels so organic and natural.
Thank you. As I've become, this is my first show, or my first, all right, it's my second. It's my first really kind of show that I've done more than once, let's say that. I've done it seven times now, and as I've progressed, I've gotten more comfortable, and I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable about ad-libbing, and, occasionally someone speaks in the audience and I'm getting more comfortable and relaxed talking back to them. So I really wanted to give myself a safety net because I had never done a cabaret before. I didn't even actually know when I started doing Love Story that it was a cabaret.
What would you say is a cabaret for people that don't know?
So, interestingly, when we were talking together with Somoro about putting on the show, and Dominic actually said, why don't we call it a cabaret? And I said, that's an interesting word. That's a good idea. But in my mind, cabaret was a big production with glittery costumes. I kind of thought of it a lot as adjacent to burlesque, and it had it meant something very different to me. But upon doing research, I actually came to understand that cabaret in its original form, and we're talking 1920s Paris here, or even earlier, sort of 1890s, turn of the century, Paris, Montmartre, you've got Toulouse-Lautrec, Eric Satie, the pianist, and they were all these artists were congregating in Montmartre in the 18th arrondissement in Paris. And of course, then you had the Moulin Rouge arrived, and all of these different cabarets. You had the Chat Noir, for example. And actually, this space was really, it was a place for spoken word and song. And that cabaret in its in one of its most original forms was actually monologue, spoken word, and singing, and poetry, which I thought was really interesting. And these cabarets often were hosted at hotels or in music halls. I also learned that these were often where artists would come to kind of train. It's sort of like a training ground. So you'd have great pianists and great painters like Toulouse-Lautrec who would go out and paint performers, or they'd make the posters for these shows, which would go on to be, we still sell those posters today for the Folies Bergère, So I actually, upon discovering that word or rediscovering the meaning behind that word, I for the first time felt that I had a creative and artistic home. Because before I wasn't really sure what I was doing. I was singing, I was performing, I was writing poetry, I was talking. But I have been really excited to find that there's this whole legacy and many, many, many wonderful practitioners, often women who've come before me. And there's lots for me to discover there. So it's been a wonderful experience. Just that one little word changed a lot for me.
And you're in your element when you do it also, because I was there with Andrea and we saw you and it looked very natural also. So I had the impression that this is what you've ever done. So that's always a good sign.
It's a good sign. I did it. I did stand up and probably do cabaret. I was probably doing that maybe from the moment I could talk and walk. And there's hundreds of home videos of me just standing up and just telling people stories. And you know what it's like. You grow up and you think, oh, you know, the odds of me making it, and I should get a sensible job, and I should do the right thing. But I lost that for a little while, and that's really what Love Story is about. Is remembering that childhood play and the thing that you just love to do and do most naturally, and allowing that and accepting that. I mean, I know you returned to music yourself, and
music and entertainment and events, and I did, yes. Always had something to live by and to live for, and I'm kind of trying to do both.
Yeah.
I admire you for what you're doing with the poetry, and I think many people admire you as well. And I think one of the reasons many people are a bit blown away when you maybe answer that you're a poet, because they're thinking, well, how do you live, or how do you make a living, or like what does it mean to be like, how does money come in when you write poetry, or because we live in this society where it's more and more focus on how do you sustain yourself and what kind of job you have and these things. But that's why I think it's very fascinating to meet sometimes people that choose to go the narrow road and follow this path. And it's not easy at all. Obviously, it's not it's not an easy road. It's not a cozy road.
Nope.
It's not a but it is your road, and it's the most important thing, that it's your road. Yeah. And it's a meaningful road, and those roads are not easy. And it's not that it's people say I found my passion or something, and now it's you'll know when you find it, because it's not all the roses, it's fairly at least behind the scenes it's pretty bumpy.
It's rough.
It's rough.
It's rough. It's not easy. I really resonate with that. But it's like you say, you at some point you feel that it's not a choice. And in a way,
it chose you, kind of, or something.
A little bit.
It grabbed you a little bit.
Actually, not even a little bit, a lot. I knew pretty quickly, as soon as I'd written a handful of poems and I heard, felt, knew Love Story, and it didn't take very long before everything I did was in service of this idea. And I can only describe it as a real sense of faith that me and this idea, Love Story, were going to work together, and I was going to do my bit to bring Love Story into the world, and in return, Love Story would look after me and help me to grow. I mean, it's really, I've had to really push myself to be the artist that I need to be for Love Story. And of course, like, right, it's not just making the art. That's the fun bit. Can be difficult at times, but it generally is. That's the bit that you want to do. But there's also, the less exciting part of being an artist, which is that you have to run a business. And you have to deal with a lot of ups and downs, a lot of rejection. But I have really pushed myself to do what I need to do for this idea. And you get to be lots of different things, I come up with the costumes. I figured out how to make it look great on stage. I figured out how to write the songs, how to produce the show, how to learn an insane amount of lines. And I feel like I can do things now. A challenge can arise. And before, I think perhaps I would have been a little bit scared. But now if I'm met with something and I don't know how to do it, I think, well, perhaps I can learn how to do this. Or if not, I can find the person who knows. So... yeah.
I think what you bring to the table is very exciting, and also from an entertainment point of view also, it's very unique, because it is entertainment, and also but it's a different kind of entertainment. We provide mostly musicians and music concepts when we work with clients. But I really believe that there's a place for your kind of offering as well, as an entertainment session in there. Tell us also a little bit about, because you're not Norwegian, obviously, and your poems are all in English.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work, and is that an issue, or are Norwegians happy to hear English poetry, or how does that work?
I am from Manchester in the UK. I've lived in Norway for 6 years. Jeg snakker norsk også. Jeg bare jeg skarer. Du vet det.
I haven't heard you speak
You
Norwegian.
haven't heard me speak Norwegian. Yes, I do speak Norwegian, and I am starting to write in Norwegian as well. To me,
Really?
yeah, but it's
After 6 years?
Yeah, well, poetry in Norwegian, but it's very different, when you're using your second language. And
Of course.
And of course, I have quite international audiences, but of course there are many local people coming, and everyone speaks incredible English here. And I'm incredibly grateful that people come, and I don't take it for granted that people come and listen to my work in a second language. I hope that there are other Norwegian elements to my work. I mean, Oslo is such a great love for me. I love this city, and so much of what I write is in dialogue with Vigeland. So many of my poems are written at Vigelandsparken, or in dialogue with Munch and those amazing sunsets and the incredible skies here that you get in Norway that I just have never seen. I've traveled, and Paris has pretty spectacular sunsets. But Oslo, there's something else. I start the show by saying there really is magic in those skies. So hopefully, if it's not in Norwegian, there is enough of Norway in my poems and in my songs. Love story it wouldn't exist if I hadn't if life hadn't led me to Norway and particularly to Oslo. I've been really enchanted.
How did you end up here?
Well, I came here first for love. And then I stayed for work. I was working as an academic. I left academia because I knew I had to do what I'm doing now, and I couldn't do it any longer.
What did you teach?
I was an anthropologist.
What, anthropologist?
Yeah. I trained as an anthropologist.
What does that mean? What do you teach?
Anthropologos, the study of man, the study of humans. I studied human behavior as a social scientist.
Okay.
And that's what I was doing. And you know what? I learned so much, and I met so many amazing people, and it helped me learn how to think. How to find my way through an argument, and hopefully listen to people as well. When you're an anthropologist, you spend a lot of time listening and then kind of making sense of that. So that's what I was going to do. But at some point I was at this crossroads, when you had to choose. You have to choose, right? You suddenly figure out I got to do this. It's now or never, or it'll be 10 years down the line and I will have still not done it.
Yeah. And then I'll have to live with that.
Yeah. There's no easy way out, right?
No. You can you can take the Homer Simpson alternative. He says when he's eating this thing he shouldn't be eating, and what's his wife's name? Calling it Marge. Marge's like, you shouldn't be eating that. And they go, yeah. That's a problem for future Homer. And then he keeps eating, and then he says, "Boy, I don't envy him."
Yeah, I mean, you could do that. I've done that. I've been that guy.
Yeah, we've all been that person
Yeah.
at times. No, but that's definitely a brave thing. How do you remember all these poems? Like, you said there's 12 poems. They're quite large, some of them.
Yeah.
And then you have all the monologues in between that you also use to link the poems, and you memorize them. How do you memorize all these things?
A lot of the poems, almost as soon as I write them, I can remember them pretty quickly. They tend to actually haunt me a little bit in the first days that I'm with a poem. It just goes around, I've lost so many nights of sleep because they're so rhythmic. I don't know if you write songs, and have you had that experience?
I know what you mean. It stays in your head,
right?
And it keeps playing.
Oh my gosh, it just doesn't leave. It just
like a beat that is like there in the background.
Yeah. So it's kind of the same experience as when you've learned even when you've learned a song. Like, anyone can relate to that, right? You learn a song and it's stuck in your head. I have the same thing with poems. So that's usually fairly straightforward. There are obviously some that are, each poem is its own individual phenomenon, So there are some poems that I actually still struggle to remember. I stand on stage and I say them wrong all the time. I mess the line up, or I mix a line, or sometimes I miss an entire poem. I did that in my last show, and I didn't realize until the end of the show. I was like, I forgot a whole poem. But I guess it's like with music, when you forget something or a line, you just have to run through it and just like nothing happens. You just got to hope for the best, right? And you just got to hope.
And most of the times, you're the one that knows it. The people are not that. They're not following that level of detail that you are. For you, it's a tragedy or something. Oh, I didn't play this note, or I passed this accord or something.
Yeah.
But you're most likely the only one who's paying that deep attention.
Yeah. No, you're so right. Like, sometimes it does feel like a tragedy, and it's like it's the best moment, or it's the whole. If you if you miss a line at the beginning of the show, and then you just kind of miss like so much of it by the time you get to the end. It's like, that one line explains everything, And actually, Frida, who's playing the piano, she has the script, so she knows when I'm missing a line. I mean, she's so professional. She just carries on, and she can usually figure out where I am in the script if I've jumped a bit or. But I actually, for the rest of the script, I just write it out over and over again, and then I drill. And you can probably find me walking around Oslo. It looks like I'm talking to myself. I'm just drilling lines. And sometimes people, you bump into someone and they're like, hey, I'm like, I'm not talking to myself. I'm just drilling my lines. Sometimes I'm just singing. Sometimes I just sing.
And sometimes, if I remember, you're out looking for luck or something? No, what was that line? You're out looking for?
Poems.
You're out looking for poems.
Poems, yeah.
In the moonlight or something.
Yeah.
Was that a poem as well?
That's a poem, yeah. Searching for the blue moon. Yeah. I went out searching for the moon, went looking for the night's godhead. You can't sit down and write a poem, You can't just be like, I'm going to write a poem. You just have to, if you look at a poem directly in the face, it's going to hide. You have to kind of carry on doing your life, doing your job, doing your accounts, walking around the city, drinking a coffee, and then the poem comes. You have to, I go to Vigelandsparken, or I go and look at a Munch painting, and I always say that I don't feel like I make art. I feel like I find it. And I feel like that more and more when I'm writing a song. Often I've written some lyrics, and I've written a melody, or even a fully formed song. And Frida is the talent who can make the accompaniment and bring the song to life. That's an amazing feat. I can't play any instruments. I have no coordination. And luckily enough, Frida is this magnificent talent. And, I have some recordings of us from the early rehearsals of Love Story, and I really feel like we're finding the song. We're not making it. We have to kind of uncover the treasure. So that's kind of how I work.
On the other hand, I hear some very renowned artists that say that there's a discipline required, and you have to just sit down and commit to writing, or how do you is there something to that as well? Or because it seems like just going out trying to find inspiration can also be a bit maybe it doesn't work all the time. You have to at some time also plan and say, I'm gonna sit down and just try to write for 2 hours, even if nothing comes out. If I'm always gonna wait to be inspired and some good idea or poem land, that's gonna be a bit tricky sometimes. Or how do you feel?
Yeah, no, I mean you're absolutely right, and of course you can have a million. I mean, there's so many great ideas out there, but it's really about committing to the idea. And the way that I did Love Story, and I think the way that I will work for the next project that I'm working on, is I write the poems, I write the songs. They tend to come pretty serendipitously to me. I mean, some of the songs I was asked to write, and that's another story. But of course, there was a point where this had to be a show, right? And it had to be a cohesive experience. It had to be a story. It's a story. I don't want people, like poetry at school felt so difficult. It felt like a language or a code to crack, or a language that I couldn't speak. And I think everyone feels like that. You're like, oh, it's a poetry exam. I have to know what it means.
Yeah.
And actually, I really want people to like relax. I want people to have I want to entertain people. I want poetry is fun. It should, it's fun, and it should make us feel, and it should make us think, and it should make us question, but I don't want it to be hard. So there are definitely points where I have to sit down and I have to write. And let me tell you, behind Love Story are so many failed drafts of time. I have sat down for years and years and years and written and written and written and not liked anything that I did.
But is this what you have now in Love Story? You say you started in 2019, so this has been an ongoing process.
Yeah.
Whatever you have now, is that it, or are you changing it all the time? Is it like a painting that keeps changing, or is it locked in now and that's it?
I think that what I have now is Love Story as it is. Love Story when it found its home at the magnificent Sommero. That is a chapter that is just magnificent. But Love Story, there will be future chapters for Love Story. I'm hoping it's going to be a film. And that, it will be a different love story when it's on the screen. So I'm already putting together ideas, and of course there's been failed drafts and things, but I believe that it's starting to become clearer.
Tell us about that. Your plans of making it a movie or a film. What do you want to do with it?
It's so new, this idea, but I will say that I want it to be so fun. I want it to be so free, and I really want to take off any expectations for... I want it to be like cabaret, but on screen, you know? Of course, it's going to be a musical. I think that's going to be the thing that people will understand. But I want to be as honest as I can. I don't think I'm going to act it. You know, I think I'm just going to do what I do on stage, which is tell people my love story, you know?
Have you thought of doing a theater thing out of it? Do you think the movie is a better representation of that than a theater context?
I would love to take it to a theater as well. There's I think love story is kind of like a cat, you know. I think it's got at least 9 lives. But I think, you know, when you have so many ideas and so many projects and you're like, what next? You know, what do I do first? And first it has to be the film. And off the back of the film, you know, then there's going to be a soundtrack. You know, there is a blueprint for that. I grew up feasting on musicals, you know, a lot of the musicals from the 50s and 60s, Rodgers and Hammerstein, The Sound of Music, My Fair Lady, Cabaret, of course, Disney films. I was reciting The Lion King from a young age in car journeys. You can ask my parents about that. They've heard a lot of The Lion King. So those, and then Andrew Lloyd Webber, Cats, of course, is an adaptation of T.S. Eliot's Old Possum's Book of Cats. Is that the title?
I'm not sure.
So, yeah, I think I was reading it this morning. I was reading it, T.S. Eliot's Cats. We can check.
We can check it now.
Great.
What's it called?
If you just Google T.S. Eliot's Cats, Old Possum's Book of Cats. Is that it?
T.S. Eliot Cats, Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats.
Practical Cats. That's the one. That's the one.
It's a collection of light poems about feline psychology and sociology published by Faber and Faber. Okay, so...
It's great. If you're a friend of cats.
Well, I am. I have to. I should probably read this.
You would. I think you would love it. Yeah. So, yeah. Andrew Lloyd Webber, of course, adapted T.S. Eliot's Book of Cats into Cats, the musical. So, you know, there's a blueprint for that. But I want to do what I do when I stand on stage, which is just to be honest and tell people what I think and how I feel. And it's just an hour. And I just want to tell people that. Your
show is, you said an hour, so it's what, 2 times 30 or something like that? 2 times 40 or?
It gets a little bit longer. Every time. I keep adding new songs. But it's, the first act is 40 minutes. And then after the interval, it's about another 35 minutes. Yeah.
But we discussed also the possibility of you maybe for certain events putting something more compact together, maybe a 15-20 minute thing only.
Yeah, for sure.
How would the selection process be then? How would you narrow that down from, because now you have the time to do an hour and 20 in total, and then you have to narrow it down to 15 or 20. What would your selection process be like? What would you leave out? You know, or how would you?
I mean, we have this cool little bag of poetry goodies and you know, love poems and love songs. One of my favorite things to do is to speak to the occasion. You know, people have asked me, "Oh, can you do this? Can you do a poem for a baby shower? Can you know, recite? You know, obviously, love is a pretty good theme I can do, but it's always really nice just to select 2 or 3 poems and 2 or 3 songs, and then give that away.
You say songs and poems, but it's the same. It's you're singing your poems, right? Or is it different?
No, I have poems and then I have songs. But you're right in that I do have some poems that I recite and then also sing. Because, it's a very blurry line, right? Between a poem and a song.
You can sing your poems and you can also read your lyrics.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. But there are some songs that, it wouldn't be as fun to read them.
Yeah.
You gotta sing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at what point do you think you'll move on from, okay, this was love story and now we'll just do something else that is not love story anymore? Because I feel like everything that you're building now, the songs and it's just going into that love story bag. At what point will you say, okay, that was love story, we'll leave that aside and then we'll start something new?
Yeah.
Or is everything just love story? Everything you're creating is just in the love story bucket?
I did a show at the beginning of last year called Shopping for God.
Shopping for God?
Yeah, that was really fun. And I don't really know what's going to happen with that, but I can tell you as well that I'm writing new stuff all the time. I've got a whole other album of songs and loads of new poems, and that's going to be in the sequel to Love Story, which is Success Story.
Oh, so you do have a sequel.
I do have a sequel.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Success Story.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the next one now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Love Story, Success Story. Oh, you're keeping the story there.
Yeah, I'm keeping the story. I think there's a third one in there somewhere. It's going to be a trilogy, right?
I'm pretty sure you cannot stop with the second.
Nah.
You need a third story.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what that will be yet. I've got a few things, but I'm sure that will reveal itself. But Success Story it's really about, in the same way that Love Story is about redefining love. We think that love is about this big Hollywood romance and it's, flowers and chocolates and big feelings. But actually, love is, the ancient Greeks had 6 different definitions of love. So they had agape, which is universal, unconditional love, or they had philia, which is love for your friends or your family, or philotia, which is love for the self. And I don't know why we kind of don't celebrate love between our friends more, like, and love for ourselves. I mean, that's a huge theme in Love Story. So Success Story, I guess it's the kind of same thing, we think success is one thing, and I'm not so sure. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm gonna find out what success means to different people and to myself.
Yeah, it's interesting. Both success and love, I guess, are very broad. They're very big words.
Yeah, for sure.
And it triggers a lot of emotions and associations.
Yeah.
I guess. What would you say if we stick to the love part first? And I guess this is something that for viewers interested, they can find out if they see your show.
Yeah.
What is love for you? How do you look at love? What does it mean for you? It's a broad question, but like what does that word mean for you, and how do you regard it?
I used to think that love was a feeling. And now I think that love is a learned art. I think it's a skill set. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to just know how to love. And we're not taught. I mean, of course, I was loved. I have loving parents. But as a prescribed skill set and something that you can actually get better at, and something that isn't just a big Hollywood romance, that it is in the small everyday actions when you're, even with strangers, even when you're in a supermarket, even, you can express love in tiny ways every single day. And it doesn't need to be, and I guess that's the poetry and that is poetry to me, is the celebration of these small moments and the tiny things, and finding the beauty in the ordinary, and making something extraordinary. So that's what I have come to think love is. But if we had an hour and a half, I would just do the whole show. I can just do the whole show now, if you want.
Yeah. Put me on pause and then
I have a script.
You have it in your head.
Yeah, but I don't have Frida with me, so it's not the same.
It's not the
Frida.
same. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. Do you think love is also a choice to a certain degree?
I do.
It's something you choose.
I do. Yeah. I think that's a great question. I think it's a choice.
I ask because I've always thought of love also as being, of course it's a feeling, it's all of that also. But I also feel that it's a choice.
Yeah.
Or something that you commit to.
Yeah. What does love mean to you?
Yeah, what is love?
This isn't fair because I had an answer ready.
No, I guess I just have to brainstorm my way through it also, because I don't have, a dictionary. Love for Johan is but I resonate with the things you mentioned. I would add also the thing I mentioned now with being a choice. I think also as I mature, I understand more that it's also about sticking and committing to something, and that is love also. I think love is also something, it's really connected with passion, and I think passion consumes you. I think love consumes you. So it's something that burns you, but it's ironically the right thing to burn for. So we all have to burn for something.
Right.
We're going to die, and we have to burn for something. So I guess passion and love are connected in that sense, and means just choose something to burn for. So there's that, and then I also think there's a sacrificial element to it. Something in me has to die for something that I love to grow. Again, back to the burning and the death. The last one, actually, I think a lot more when I think about it. This element of sacrificial, voluntary sacrificial. That there's something in me that has to be sacrificed for a better purpose. And I guess that's what we do in our relationships. Now I'm a dad. I feel that feeling and that thing growing more and more. This aspect of I will have to sacrifice myself for this child.
Right.
I'll have to give up things for him to. So that's love as well.
Yeah.
All apart from the romantic, everyday love fantasy thing that we all associate with, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then I think I get associations with unconditional love. And then obviously I think about my mom, because that's the only person that I can think about who's given me unconditional love. I think it's the case for many people, but for me at least, it's like I haven't received that kind of unconditional love.
Yeah.
It's only, for me, it's only one person, it's my mom.
Yeah.
So that's very special.
For sure.
I mean, it's like, to receive something just because you haven't done anything. It's just because you're you. That's very special, and rare. And as I grow into adulthood now, and my mom is getting older, I see that with different eyes now, and I kind of want to have a little bit of that also to my son now.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's all these things, right? Love should be nurturing, should be. I think also that love, when experienced to its fullest, is something that makes us. It's enlarging. It's something that boosts us with energy, that sustains us, makes us thrive, gives us energy. I think that's the way if I'm in a love situation, and I'm using love very broadly, not just in a relationship, but in a partnership, in a professional aspect, in all kinds of settings where there's love, there's energy, and things are moving in the right direction, and you feel like doing more, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, yes, you're so right.
Yeah, these are the things that I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
When I think about love.
That's very cool. I really resonate with that as well. That where there's love, there's also this energy and clarity, and of course, love for what you do. I mean, whether that's a hobby or whether that's caring for your child, or I think that of course, your passion doesn't have to be your job, but certainly you have to love that thing, and that's what makes it blossom. That's what what makes us able to create art and businesses and projects and labor of love.
Yeah. Do you think there's enough love in today's society? In general, what's your take? What's your barometer of the? If we were to measure the love,
I think we could have more.
We can have more.
I think we could have a lot more. I think that if it's there. Love is always there. It's ever present. It's just whether or not people let themselves know it. But love. It's kind of, for me, it's the source of everything, and so it's always there. It's just whether or not you tap into it. But it's always an option, it's always a choice.
It certainly feels like there's a lot more love in the summer months than in the winter months.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. In
love
a way.
Seems to go away in the winter months.
Yeah,
and then come back around mid-April, May.
I really do notice that when the sun comes out in Oslo, people just sing. You just hear people singing. I've never seen. I really get it. It's been 4 winters for me now in Oslo, and I really get why everyone is so obsessed with light here. With sunlight. You see people stop in the street and they just let the sun on their skin, and I do that now, and I get it, and so yeah, but there's also something that's just full of love about cozying up in the winter in a cabin, and it's snowing, and you've got tea or coffee, that there's winter love and there's
winter love and there's
summer love.
That's the 2 different beasts.
That's for sure. For sure. 2 very distinct genres. Yeah.
And then I just came with one. I'd like to go over to the success thing also, but just to wrap up the love thing. I also think it's fascinating how, I'm fascinated by how opposites attract each other and connect, so highs and lows and all these things. But for example, with love, I find that many of the things that obviously everyone wants to experience love. We all want to experience positive things, love. But many times it's also ironic that where there's obviously a lot to learn from a loving setting, but you also learn and grow and maybe become ironically more capable of beaming love by experiencing the opposite. So I find that ironic that some of the people that are the most loving and most caring are the ones that have experienced the opposite to a very high degree. Is that something you think about, and is that something that is in your poetry as well, or?
Definitely. I know what love is not. And I do think you're absolutely right. I think I learnt what love was because of its opposite. And I've been thinking a lot about this lately. Is the opposite of love hate? I saw an Instagram post, so I don't think I can take credit for this. And I couldn't tell you who it was. I'm sure many people have said it. But I saw someone write the other day that the opposite of love wasn't hate, but fear.
It's fear, yeah. I wanted to say that as well.
Yeah.
I also think it's fear.
Yeah. Do you?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I think that you offer love when you're open and when you're courageous, because it takes courage to offer love also, because it's something in you that could get hurt, and you have to put it out there anyways.
Yeah.
So the opposite of that would be to close everything in because you're fearful.
Yeah.
So that's why I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I definitely agree. I was very fearful for a very long time. I'm perfectly happy with being open about that. I know anxiety very well, and it's because I know fear and anxiety so well that I decided that I was going to figure out how to live a life that wasn't characterized by fear and anxiety and this closeness. And I had to make myself a promise, and that's what Love Story was for me, you know. Beyond it being a new career choice and a vessel for expressing myself artistically, it was also a promise. I mean, that's quantum change. I loosened all my knots and bound my body up in hope. All safely bundled tight, I threw my being in a boat and rode the ocean waves until my salty skins were soaked. I slept in certain faith that I could keep myself afloat. This idea that I was going to change, I was going to give myself this leap of faith and learn to love myself. And once I could love myself, I'd be able to love other people properly and the world better. And it's not a quick switch, you know, it's a journey of figuring out, okay, well, what am I scared of in myself? And how can I learn to love that? And so Love Story was it's all about that journey back home to yourself, your true self, which is this beam of love inside you. And everybody has it. You know, you had treasure. Where did you bury that treasure inside you? This idea that we all have this love and this treasure inside us. It gets covered up, you know? And it's just a process of discovery.
What do you think is the difference between acceptance and love? Or is it the same thing?
I think that the more you accept people for who they are, and we are all people, we are all imperfect, we are all, you know, good and bad and complicated and full of contradictions. And I think the more that I'm able to accept that in myself, the more that I'm able to... I surprise myself all the time. I'm like, whoa, did I just do that? Or did I just do that? And the more that I can accept my faults and celebrate my the things that I like about myself, but generally love all of it. I think it's
But again, love or accept all of it? Because I accept a lot of things about myself. I'm not sure I love it. I guess for me to say I love it would mean that extra dimension of, it's one thing is I tolerate it, I accept it, I see it, fine, okay. And another thing is, I love it. And I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you're being really honest, and you know what? I think if I'm being honest with myself, I think
acceptance is
I'm
a far.
there.
I think you're at the love point.
No, I think that sometimes I feel like you. I think sometimes I'm like, sometimes I'm not sure I even like that part of myself, but I accept it, and then I try. I think and hope that one day I'll be able to really love that part of myself. I don't always manage it, but I think the more that you can maybe it's like, okay, just accept, and then if you want to go the extra mile, love. Maybe
that's an extra. That's a bonus.
That's like that's like
dessert.
extra points. It's like A++++. But it's good. You're right. It's totally good enough to just accept.
I think
right?
it's a far. If you get to the acceptance part, you're a long way.
Right.
I mean, love is like that's like
Yeah.
It's celebrating the fact that you accept yourself or something. But accepting is more like, okay, I see this. It's good. It's a part of me. All right.
We're good.
We're good.
Yeah. I certainly learned to love the part of me that was scared, and I do love that part of me, and that's something I'm very proud of.
I don't love the part of me that is scared.
That's fair.
I don't love it.
That's fair.
I maybe accept it, but I don't love it. The part of the one that is like scared.
Yeah. I think the only way that I can love the part of me that's scared is, or the only way that I can accept the part of me that is scared is by loving it, is by saying, and actually, do you know Elizabeth Gilbert?
No.
She's a writer. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and she also wrote Big Magic, which is this brilliant book about ideas. And she describes that she was very fearful as a child and how she learned to deal with her fear. And she always describes this scene when she's in a car and she's got fear with her in the car, and I'm not sure what else is in there, maybe courage. And she is talking about, okay, fear, you know what? You can come with us to where we're going. I'm going to go and do something cool. You can come. You can sit in the car. You are allowed to be here. But you have to sit in the back seat and you're not allowed to drive. And that for me changed everything.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? You're welcome. I'm never going to get rid of you. You can be here. But I'm driving. Love is driving.
That's a good point. And on the topic of fear is a big one. Maybe fearful story could be the third one or something. I don't know. But
horror, no. Scream story. Yeah, maybe it's a thriller.
I'm thinking recently a lot about fear. That now that you also brought it up, there's this person, a Jungian therapist that I follow a lot. Read a lot of his books. I've actually just purchased his last book. His name is James Hollis. It's absolutely amazing, and he talks a lot about fear. He said the two. So he's a Jungian therapist. So obviously a lot of his teaching is based on Carl Jung and so on. And he says that there's a couple of gremlins that are bed every single morning. And one is fear and one is lethargy. And I think lethargy, would you say that that's the same as laziness or coziness? Yeah?
Lazy.
Yeah? Lazy, yeah. He said those are the two gremlins. And one is saying, stay in bed. They're both basically saying stay in bed. One of them is saying that because the world is too big and you're too small and, you're not going to amount to much. And so just stay in bed. And the other one is like, have a bonbon and you can postpone it to tomorrow and, chill. Watch Netflix.
Right, yeah.
And he says those are the two gremlins. Those are the two elements we have to fight to overcome every single day. It's almost like addiction. It's like every single day they will be there in the morning. You have to they'll never get out of the room. It's just something you have to acknowledge.
Yeah.
That's one thing I think a lot about.
Yeah.
And then the second one on fear that I have written somewhere here to remind me every single day. And this was a quote from Jung also, and I really love it. It says that the spirit of evil is the negation of the life force by fear. Only boldness can deliver us from fear. And if the risk is not taken, the meaning of life is violated. And I have that written down. It's very powerful.
Yes.
Because there's a spirit of evil in there, and it's all about fear and how boldness it's the only way. It's just boldness, courage. And if the risk is not taken, so there's a risk element in there, then it's kind of like the life meaning is violated or something like that. There's very strong words on that. And that's something to think about on fear.
Yeah. And Jung, of course, also said, wherever your fear is, there is your task. But I love what you highlight about this boldness, and it is going to be lethargy, and it is going to be fear that stop you. And so you've got to know these two little gremlins, and say, okay, I see you, I know you,
I acknowledge you. It's all good.
Yeah.
Come with me, but like you say, in the back.
Yeah, like
in
Liz Gilbert says, right, in the back, in the back. And really, I couldn't have done Love Story without my fear. The whole point of Love Story was that I overcame my fear. That voice in my head that told me the odds of you making it as an artist, and that's a very narrow idea of what making it means. I also think, you have your own dreams, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I think many artists go and approach this business also with the mindset of making it and becoming famous and becoming, and I just think there's something wrong about starting the journey with that in mind as a goal. I mean, I respect it. It's fine if you have it, but I think it should happen as a byproduct of a lot of things that you're doing well. I didn't start this podcast to become famous. I'm not starting my business to become famous or rich or any of these things. I want to be successful, and we get back to what successful is. But I want to do what brings me back to, again, to the energy and the love. What motivates me intrinsically, what I would do without getting paid, and what I'm good at, and all these things together, and get better at it. Yeah, because it's so much fun to get better at something that is kind of going by itself than to all the time, going to an office or something you don't really, because you need the job or anything. But it's just most people. I've experienced this also the last year since I'm on this path, and I read it somewhere, and I really resonate with it now. Most people don't know themselves at 100%. We don't know what we're capable of when you're really on track, when you're doing you, when it's your thing. Yeah. We have no idea because we've not experienced that. Yeah. We have not given ourselves a chance to experience that. Yeah. And it's so fun and so rewarding and so motivating to get better, because you have to always get better, but it's just so much pleasant to process when you get better at something that you're a little bit native on. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I love languages, so getting better at languages for me is just fun. I could do it all, but getting better at, I don't know, something I'm terrible with, it's just right. I mean, maybe there comes a point where you're like, I know what I like to do, and I know what I need to learn to do what I like to do, but also knowing that I don't want to do this, and someone out there is really good at doing this, and I'm going to find that person, and we're gonna grow together. I can't play the piano. I can't do many things, and I meet more and more wonderful people every day who can do things that I can't do. And you know, thinking about success as well, I'm increasingly trying, and of course this is very Norwegian, is to think of success in a more collective way. And thinking, and of course we have a heritage of idolizing the lone genius and the lone, you know, painter. But of course, it's always a team of people. It's always a group effort. And I think it's really exciting to think about success in that way, as a collective celebration. But fame and monetary wealth, it really helps, especially if you're an artist. You can do more. So I absolutely, like you say, it's got to be a byproduct. But you know, I'm not mad at people who want to be famous.
No, I'm not mad at anyone. No, I'm not mad at anyone.
No, I know you're not mad at anyone.
And anyone, it's all good, right?
Yeah.
I just have a conviction, a personal, subjective conviction that it's a bit easier if you make it about the journey and about the exploration and about getting better and about working on things that they are meaningful, and you leave aside the I want to get rich and famous part. Yeah, that's what I think. Talking about cats, I have two and you have one, Bagheera.
Bagheera and Shadow. Because we were talking about T.S. Eliot before, and I read his poem and the opening of his book, and his poem is all about a cat should have 3 names. It should have its everyday name, I don't know, Tom, Joe, Eleanor, Johan. It should also have a fancy name that no other cat has. And then the 3rd name is the name that only the cat knows. And you just got to read the poem, because T.S. Eliot says it a lot better than me. But a cat should have 3 names. So
this book you talked about cats, is it one book? Is it a volume or?
Yeah.
It's a volume?
It's a whole book on cats.
It's just a whole book with many poems?
With many poems in. And then it was adapted into a musical that was on the West End.
Oh.
And many, you know, midnight, not a sound from the pavement, memory. It's an amazing song. I will send it to you. It's a whole musical just of cats. So, yeah, I only have 2 cat poems and 1 cat song. So I really gotta up my game. I need more cat content.
Yeah. You get a lot of inspiration from reading that?
Yes, I grew up reading that. And I get a lot of inspiration from cats. I mean, my cat is my muse. I say that in the show, that my cat is my muse, and I'll tell you all about it.
Bagheera. And Shadow was the second name?
Yes, that's the second name.
And the third, only you know?
No, only she knows.
Oh, only she knows?
I don't know.
Okay. That's funny.
So there you go. You can have two more cat names in your household.
You know what happens with me and the cats? So originally it was Benji and Maya, but nobody calls Benji.
Ah, you see?
But he has more names because
right.
I give him all these names and then by selection I stick with some of them. Like for example, for some reason he ended up being called Papi. So he's Papi and then he's also Papuchi, Papi. And then Maya is never Maya. She's Ronki Tronki.
See? Yes, very T.S. Eliot.
She is Ronki Tronki.
Ronki Tronki.
And she's Ronki Tronki because she, what do you call it when you do these sounds? Yeah.
Yeah.
when cats purr, yeah, when they purr, right? When she purrs, I was touching her, and then all of a sudden I felt like, in Spanish it's roncar, which means to not to purr, but when you do like when you
Snore.
to snore. Yeah, so that's she was doing something between a purr and snoring. So anyway, so I was touching her, and I said, roncar is to snore, and I said ronki, and then I said tronki because it's just, and then it stick to me, ronki tronki, and now everyone's just ronki tronki.
Amazing.
So we have many examples of that.
Yeah.
So there you go, the original names, and then they have another name, and then the
special name. And then there's names that only Maya and Benji know.
I love that.
Yeah.
Over to we can there's a lot to unpack there with the love story, and it's fascinating because we've touched on love and fear, which is also part of it, and accepting and loving yourself and these things. Very, very interesting. And now I'd like to spend some time on success. So tell us a little bit about what success story is about, and how far are you in that process of writing, and yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of it is this. I consider myself successful for having made the art and for having put it out there. That's the hard bit. And anyone who sees an idea through, and these are people in all walks of life, when you open your eyes to it, there is art everywhere. There is poetry everywhere. People write songs that you don't even realize. People are making art that you don't even realize, and that to me is a huge success. I mean, it's hard enough to be a human, right? Like, we have to pay our bills. We have to just eat enough food, and then we make art. I mean, that making art is, you're already successful. I think there's something in that, and I'm also trying to think a lot about, on one hand, accepting my desires and accepting that I am a performer. I love to stand on stage and tell people stories. I love to be seen in that way. And that's so liberating. I think there's so many people that can often be very demonized in people, and you like attention, but actually some people are born performers. They are born speakers. They have something they love to share, and they just happen to want to use their body in the same way someone might want to use a computer to express themselves, or a saxophone, or, I mean, you're also a fabulous speaker and performer yourself. But there's something so liberating in just saying, I am so content to stand on stage and let people see me as Eleanor Flowers. I have my stage name. I have this persona, I guess, is a fair word, and that's so exciting to step into that kind of part of myself. But then the rest of my life, I'm very content just to walk around Oslo in tracksuit bottoms and not be seen at all, and work at my day jobs and be and watch other people, and also when I said I love to be seen in this way, and it's such a gift that people give me when they come and see my show, and they listen to me, and they say, will you sing for us? Will you read us a poem? That's a gift to me. I mean, if I could, I would pay people to do what I do. But to give that to someone else now, to listen to someone else, to listen to their art, to let them be seen, and then it's this exchange that we have with one another. So I certainly think that has been an element of success for me. But then there is also the other element of success, which is I really don't care about being given permission, and I don't care about needing certain markers to feel valuable. I don't need an awful lot of money and resources to do my art, and I'm fortunate in that way. I can just stand up on a street corner and tell someone a poem. And there's also something very freeing about when you start to work with what you've got, rather than thinking, I need a fancy name or a big advertising budget. There's something about saying, what I have is enough, and I'm going to give it to the world. And it deserves to be heard. And I started 3 years ago. I started a blog. I don't need to wait for a book publisher. I have the internet. I don't need to wait.
Yeah, just write it and put it out there.
Right. I don't need to wait for a film. A film, any kind of film deal or production deal. I have Instagram. I put a video out last night. It's just home videos, and it's just a little recording that I made in rehearsals of my song Ruby, and that's art, and it can touch people in just the same way as a amazing movie. It doesn't matter how you do it. It's wonderful to have big budgets and big resources, and it's wonderful to have these limitations where you say, what can I do with what I've got? And there's no right or wrong, but I think that is definitely also something that I've experienced as successful is just starting. A lot of people are too scared to start. And it's a shame, because think how much art we miss out on when you don't move past the fear, like you say, where you don't take the risk. And I understand why you wouldn't. I do understand.
Yeah, it's very understandable.
For sure.
Don't need to be a rocket science. It's not rocket science to understand why.
No.
And I like what you said there about, I resonate with that as well, with accepting that you like, in your instance, to be in front of a crowd, and that you don't have to give yourself permission to do that. And I also like what you say about doing whatever you can with the resources you have there, and not expecting. It's always easy to say, with a bigger budget, I would do this and that, or when this or when that, but bottom line is, in the beginning, it's hard.
Yeah.
And regardless of what you're doing, if you're an entrepreneur or starting a business, right, whatever, the beginnings are also always very, very hard. Tough. It's bootstrapping. It's almost like levitating, right? It's almost like pulling yourself up from your bootstraps, right?
Right.
How you do that? I don't know. Just find a way.
Yeah.
And those are, I think, also the days when you recall the most, and that you will look back on once and go, wow. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe that I did that. I mean, if you were giving a budget from the start, it's like, here you have everything. It wouldn't be the same.
No,
it wouldn't be the same.
No, it wouldn't be the same.
It would not be the same.
The fun is in.
And you have to change it. You have to change it, because you have to make a bit of fun and a bit of everything. In the beginning of the circumstance, because if you're just gonna beat yourself, you're not gonna end up in a nice place. You have to look at it also with a bit of with sarcasm, with irony, with it's part of life's journey, and throw a poem in there or whatever, and accept it, and because it is, again, and once you get past that hurdle, those will be the days that you will look back and go, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that was incredible. So,
Yeah.
But it's very hard, and I understand that it's not something you when you're struggling and you're in the midst of it to try to make it. It's not when you go, oh, let's be funny about it. I understand that.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I think, being able to laugh. I mean, I wouldn't have any art. I wouldn't have any poems. I certainly wouldn't have any songs if I hadn't struggled. And it's such a comfort to me now when things get really rough. I'm like, well, at least there's going to be a song, or at least I can write a poem, or at least someone else has written a poem about this, or a song that's going to get me through this. And the everyday struggle is it's full of joy for me, and I really have come to some peace with that. When I'm doing things that I don't want to do, I want to do the fun stuff. I want to do the costumes and the singing and the shows, but actually everything that I do, like I said before, is in service of love story and is in service of art. And then the tiniest everyday action can be really delightful, because it's just an act of service and it's that balance, you have the big moments and the big wins, and then there's tiny everyday, there's discipline, there's menial administrative tasks and all of those things. And it's the world of opposites that we live in. I'm actually reading the Tao Te Ching at the moment. Oh. And I never read it before. Have you read it?
Yeah. The opening line, I think, is that something with the 10,000 things. Oh, wait, that's the second.
I have it in my bag,
The Tao that can be named is not the Tao.
Yes, that's it.
And the Tao, I'm quite familiar with the Tao Te Ching. Actually, I've read the Tao Te Ching, and I've also read a very beautiful interpretation of the Tao Te Ching by Wayne Dyer. Have you heard of it?
No.
You should check it out. I'll write it after. It's very beautiful. He died 10 years ago, Wayne Dyer. Have you heard of him? He was a writer. And he spent a whole year in Maui, and just every single day connecting to the Tao Te Ching and writing what he thought was an interpretation of every poem. So you have the poem, and you have his interpretation, and also kind of a little call to action in the end also. So it's quite a nice. Yeah, the Tao, it means the way, right? So there's a lot of interesting things there. A lot of opposites, high rests on lows.
Yeah.
The water, I like the theme about the water, how the water is, you can't grasp the water, but it gets everywhere.
Yeah.
It's all these opposite ideas. It's the space between the bars that keeps the lion,
Yeah.
It's the void in the vase that gives the vase the shape, not all these things. Very, very, very fascinating.
Yeah, I read it once, all the way through last week, and now I'm reading it all the way through, but out loud. And no one's ever going to be finished with that book. It's of course, that's the whole point. It's everlasting. And but I mean, actually, and I think you come across these texts at the right time. You discover young at the right time. These lessons kind of appear when you're ready for them, right? And I must have, I guess, I knew a little bit about Taoism. I'm a big fan of Alan Watts, but I'd never read it. I'd only heard about it through secondhand sources, through Leonard Cohen, and
oh yeah, he was big on that.
Yeah. And I don't think that, well, I am sure you can, but I wonder if I could understand success without having read the Tao. And of course, you know, there's this idea that we are unfinished, and only in learning to love how unfinished we are, that's how we become complete. And so what I have really been able to come to terms with is I love the wanting to do more and be more and know more. And it's not actually the you know, it's the journey, it's not the destination. And that's an idea that it's actually really hard to embody. You know, it's really easy to say it's the journey and not the destination, but it is. It is the journey. And also, I wrote a poem, and it's one of those poems I can't remember. It's called Castle, and it will be part of Success Story. And it's, do not build your castle around you. Build your castle, by all means, build it. Then go out into the garden and greet the ones you love as they go into the castle and marvel at the palace walls. And then the poem ends with, we are so eager to make our mark on the world, so few are brave enough to let the world mark them. And I had written that idea, and I wasn't really sure if I believed it. Sometimes I write a poem and I wonder if I'm really brave enough to mean it. And then, of course, that's a very Taoist idea that you would create something and then walk away from it. And then it says that is the pathway to heaven. Easier said than done, but this idea that success might be building something that other people can have and enjoy. And I find when I come off stage, people say, oh, I loved the bit when you talked about this. And I think, I didn't talk about that. But that's poetry and that's art. Once I've given it away, it's not really mine. I can't sit and tell people what to think. And I'm always amazed at what people read in it, and they bring their own lifetime to... They
project their own story onto it.
Yeah, and that's wonderful, that's magical, and in that way we can communicate through poetry and song. Like, we're never going to be inside each other's heads.
You know, when you talk about these things, I get strong associations to painting as well, because it's a bit like painting, except you're using words, and once you're done on the stage, you go, you know, and do your things, and you're not attached to those words anymore. It was just, you know, there. A friend of mine, Bert Van Zel, great painter, lives in Spain. He always said that he loves painting, but he doesn't care about the painting. He loves to paint, but he doesn't care about the painting. So once it's done, it's done. He loves the process. Is that what you, a little bit what you feel also? That you love, or are you also very attached to the poem once it's done? Or is it more the creation and the writing and the putting it together, and it's like, yes, it's good, and then and you deliver it on stage, and then psh, I don't care about it anymore? Or are you also attached to it afterwards?
I love the process. I'm also a painter. I also make visual art. And sometimes if I can't figure out what a poem needs to be, I have to make a painting. Just painting's like a byproduct of my poetry and writing. And I've had art exhibitions and where I read my poetry and in front of the paintings. It's kind of very visual in my mind. But I love the process of writing a poem, and especially when, you know, when I get a big one, you know, I'm not sure how many great poems I'm going to get, you know, like I have my poem Cat Shapes. And I say on stage, I pray to the great poetry gods that in my lifetime I get to write another poem like this one. because I kind of feel like it was a little bit out of my control. I barely remember writing it. In fact, I don't remember writing it. But when I don't remember writing quite a lot of my poems, actually. No. But
Are you kind of in a trance when it happens? Or?
Yeah, actually. Not always, but there are many that are, and also sometimes I just write a poem and I think, well, that's not a good one. And then I go back to it and I'm like, oh, I like that one. But generally I'm pretty attached to my
to your writing.
Yeah.
And I would, sorry for interrupting, but I
interrupt.
I would have said that as well, because you've been working on it since 2019 and you're kind of always like marinating in there and changing. Then I would think, she's obviously, it's not just writing and moving on. It's you're working on it, changing it, so.
Yeah.
I guess you are maybe in love with writing and the writing.
Yeah, and I'm in love with these poems. I live with them, I have cat shapes and I say, I can give that to someone. I can make that. I made it into a short film. I sometimes write poems and friends make me an artwork in response, and they have a life of their own. It blows my mind sometimes, and
I can't wait to experience this success story. When is it out?
I have to finish Love Story, the film, first.
Okay, so that's your first commitment.
Yeah, I think. I'm not really sure how Success Story will happen. Just like I couldn't have predicted how Love Story was going to... I knew it was going to happen, but I just didn't know how. And it's the same with Success Story. I have to live a bit more, I think. But I have some of my poems ready and I have all the songs for Success Story. I don't think I've got any room left for any more songs for that show. Will surely be a show.
Well, for all our guests, they will find more information. We'll put more info on the podcast about where to find you, and obviously with Romsø Entertainment, you can get access to Eleanor, and we have a blog about you as well on our webpage for those interested. So we'll make sure you are very findable after this chat. But yeah, success is just to finish on that topic. My main thing with success is that it's a word that represents a static thing, something that is locked in time. Are you successful or not, kind of?
Yeah.
And again, I think of it as something very fluid, something very moving around, and I mean, you can be successful in one moment and unsuccessful in another.
Yeah.
So what's the point then, right?
Yeah.
We've made something very we played around with this success notion and made something out of it that I'd like a word that is more about the process. And you don't have that. That's where you have poets, I guess, and paintings and symbols.
Yes, symbols.
Right? Symbols unite all these things and so much more than a word.
Yeah.
But yes, I look at it more as a process, and it's in all fairness, it's a complicated thing, right? I mean, I think, if I'm not mistaken, success should come from this Latin word called succedere, or something like Italian succedere, which means to make it happen. I think so. I haven't checked it, but
sounds about right.
Sounds about right. Like,
I think you got it.
Have you made it happen yet, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Has it happened? Are you?
Yeah.
And then the question is like, made what happen? Like, whatever was real and had to make happen this morning is not real tomorrow. And was I successful today and successful tomorrow?
Yeah.
Next week, what about? So it's again, again back to Jung, the truths in the morning of our lives become lie in the afternoon of our lives. He said.
Did he?
Yeah. So I guess you were successful by some kind of metrics when you were 20, and then you look at them again when you're 40, and guess it changes and changes again in 10 years. So
right.
That's how I feel about success. It's always slippery and evading, and it's like, but it does. I do tend to feel that it has to do with being aligned with something in you that is pushing in your direction. Something has to do with your voice, with your mission. It's not something that is external driven or anything. It has to do with your inner thing. So it's about finding that and connecting to that and getting better and working on that.
Yeah.
That's what I think it is.
It's that's the best bit. There's nothing better than that. Money can't buy that. Being able to hear your inner voice and put it out into the world.
And connect to that and just stick to that.
Yeah.
Only issue is that I guess in the beginning of our lives it takes time to connect to that.
Yeah, of course.
You have many voices. Which one's which? What's the right one?
Yeah.
Was that my voice? Oh no, that was my dad's voice. Okay.
Right.
Oh no, that was not. That was that was the society. Where's my voice?
Yeah.
And it takes time.
For sure.
For those voices to kind of and then they go, no, it's in the back.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the one.
Yes.
That was the one.
Real quiet.
Right.
I call them whispers of the heart.
Yes.
Every so often you just hear you got to do this. You got to speak to this person. They get more and more frequent. I'm learning to listen to that voice, but sometimes I hear it really loud and clear, and it's never wrong. But then you have to have the courage, right, to be brave. You have to be brave enough to follow that. I think sometimes if you're scared, you hear the call, you hear the whisper of the heart, the path, you want to follow the water, the flow. But it's scary. So you drown out that voice. And it's very easy to do. We live in a very noisy world. So being able to hear that and follow that, and then you start to figure it out as you go, because you have to really draw your own map, I think, with these things. And I always say that with poetry and music and song, that's those are my maps, because there's no blueprint for what I want to do. If you're doing anything new, you're building a business, you're anything new, even having a child, there's not really an instruction manual. People can help you, can have guidance, but you're going to have to figure out for yourself. And Love Story was always my map.
That's also another thing I've learned in the past few years while doing this, is that no one really knows what they're doing. It's a strange
No one knows.
I used to think that everyone knows what they're doing. The businesses, they know what they're doing. At all times, it's like it's all pre-planned and everyone knows what they're doing. And now with Romsel Entertainment and doing our own business and everything, I realized when I talk to people and decision makers and everything, it's like no one has a clue. I was tricked,
Yeah. Is that when you become a grown-up? Because I had that realization relatively late, I think. When I was in academia, I realized I was like, nobody actually... I mean, of course, that's the point of being a scientist. We don't know.
Yeah, but the majority of people, they're also just trying to make it happen and survive and go ahead. The big corporations, the all of them are just trying to always adjust and you know. But some of these people are very good at putting this image of, you know, we're in total control and we know exactly. But you find out very quickly, no, it's not like that.
No.
That was a bit comforting for me as well. That okay, if we're all kind of lost and we're all finding our way, then you know.
Yeah.
Let's
talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
We should do a podcast.
Yeah, we should do a podcast. Yes.
But I think, and that's something that I really enjoy about being on stage. I have my script. I have rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. I've been working on this for years. It's my great love. But there has to be a moment where I'm being really honest and I'm letting people see me. You're so vulnerable on stage. You really are. I mean, things do go wrong, and you know, mistakes do happen. Sometimes my voice fails me. All kinds of things go wrong, and also I'm saying these words over and over again, hundreds and hundreds of times. Every time I promised myself that when I stand in front of an audience, I'm going to tell them the truth. And I'm going to tell them that poem or that line or that song in the most honest way I can. When I started writing Love Story all those years ago, of course, my life is very different now. I'm standing on stage. But when I say quantum change, for example, that opening poem, it means something different to me every time I stand on stage, and I'm going to tell that story as honestly as I can. And that means being seen also means letting people see your faults and your imperfections and my failure to love well at times and my failure to get out of bed on time, eat right, you know, do all the things that we're supposed to do. I fail every day. And there's an excitement there. How much am I willing to let people see me be scared and fail? And can I bring that to every performance? And maybe that's part of success too.
I think it's very brave, and I think you're doing a great job, and it's courageous.
Thanks.
And keep on. I certainly hope we get to do a lot more together. And you're very talented, very onto something, and I have no doubt that this is your path. It's a good path, and you'll get better at it with time, and keep working on your craft and your soup to make this better. I'm very happy that you had the time to join us today and to speak. We did, I think, a couple of hours on. Love story, what love is, what success is, and for everyone that wants to come see you, we'll put the information out there so they can reach out, either events or private people that want to just see your show at Somaru or whatever. Thanks for coming. Really a pleasure. And
thank you so much for having me.
I hope we can do this again soon, and then we can explore other stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's so nice to talk more. I mean, like you said, how often do you get to sit down and in the middle of the day and talk about love and success and poetry and art? So thank you for giving me this space. That was fun.
Likewise. Cool. Peace out.
Peace out.